I always knew the day would come when someone tried to take what was mine. My grandfather's land had been in our family for over a century, passed down through generations unchanged by the greedy hands of developers. It was a vast 200-acre property, thick with oak trees and rolling hills, nestled just outside city limits. When I inherited it, I made it clear to the county that I had no intentions of selling, but greed has a way of ignoring boundaries. I first heard wind of the problem when I returned from a 6-month contract overseas as a civil engineer. I took on projects worldwide, but I always came home to my land. It was supposed to be untouched just as I left it. Instead, I drove up to find a construction site sprawling across the eastern section of my property. Rows of brand new homes lined the landscape, each identical in their soulless cookie-cutter design. Bright HOA signs stood at the entrance boasting of a luxury community with exclusive amenities. My land had been taken, and someone had built an entire neighborhood on it. I parked my truck, fists clenched around the steering wheel, and took a deep breath. I wasn't a man who jumped to conclusions. I dealt with problems systematically, one step at a time. So I grabbed my property records, drove straight to the county office, and asked for an explanation. The clerk turned pale when he pulled up my file. This isn't right," he muttered. "According to our records, this land was never sold. You still own it." That confirmed what I already knew. But the real question was, how had an entire HOA management development been built on my property without my consent? The answer came quickly. A fraudulent land transfer had been filed under my name 6 months ago, complete with a fake signature and forged documents. The buyer, a dummy company connected to a development firm notorious for shady dealings. The land was sold to the HOA, which wasted no time breaking ground. I forced myself to remain calm. I wasn't just going to take this to court and ask for my land back. No, I was going to make them regret ever thinking they could steal from me. What they didn't realize was that they had built their precious community right on top of a legal landmine, and I was about to set it off. I knew better than to storm into the HOA's office and start making demands. That wasn't my style. If they had the audacity to forge documents and steal my land, they had already convinced themselves that no one would stop them. People like that thrived on arrogance, and I was going to use it against them. Instead of revealing my hand, I started gathering intel. I spent the next week researching the development firm and the HOA board. It didn't take long to find the key players. The president of the HOA, a man named Richard Calloway, was as dishonest as they came. He had a history of running HOAs like a personal business, using ridiculous fines and rule changes to squeeze homeowners dry. The development firm Westbridge Properties was run by a man named Gerald Langston, who had been sued multiple times for fraud, but always seemed to escape his way out of trouble. These weren't just greedy people, they were professionals, but they had made a mistake. They thought they could get away with this because I wasn't around. They hadn't counted on me coming back and fighting them on my own terms. My first move was to visit the development in person. I posed as a prospective buyer, dressing the part of a corporate investor. I toured the community with one of their agents, asking all the right questions about ownership, land rights, and HOA policies. I even took a copy of their community handbook. It was worse than I thought. The HOA had already started draining the homeowners dry. They had rules about lawn color, mandatory FEs for mailbox, main M, and a system of fines that seemed impossible to avoid. The homeowners didn't realize it yet, but they had walked into a trap, just like the HOA had walked into mine. Because while they were enforcing their strict rules on unsuspecting families, they had overlooked one very critical fact. Every single home in this community sat on land they didn't legally own. That was my advantage. The next step was quiet but crucial. I hired a real estate attorney, one with experience in fraud cases. I provided all my documents, the fake land transfer and proof that I had never sold my land. The moment my lawyer saw the forged paperwork, he exclaimed, "This is bad for them," he said. "Really bad." I leaned forward. "How bad are we talking if this goes to court? You won't just get your land back. You can sue them for damages, fraud, and trespassing. Every homeowner who bought a house here will have to deal with the consequences. The hole will be destroyed, and the development firm will be on the hook for millions. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. But I wasn't done yet. Before making my next move, I made sure to secure every legal angle. I filed official complaints with the county recorder office and the state real estate board. I submitted copies of my ownership records to prevent any further tampering. Then, with everything in place, I prepared to drop the hammer. It was time to introduce myself to the HOA. I didn't bother making an appointment. I walked straight into the HOA's main office, a sleek little building near the entrance of my stolen land. The receptionist, a woman in her late 50s, with the air of someone who had spent too many years enforcing trivial rules, gave me a disapproving look the moment I stepped inside. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyeing me like I didn't belong. "Yeah," I said, placing a thick folder of legal documents on the counter. "I need to speak with Richard Calloway now." She scoffed. "Mr. Calloway is a very busy man. If you need to discuss an HOA matter, you can schedule a meeting like everyone else." I smiled. "Oh, I'm sure he'll want to see me. Tell him it's about the land under his feet." That got her attention. She hesitated, then picked up the phone and dialed an extension. After a whispered conversation, she hung up and gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Follow me." She led me to a conference room where Richard Calloway was waiting. He was exactly what I expected. A man in his late 50s wearing an expensive suit that screamed fake authority. He had the look of someone used to getting his way. The kind of person who bullied people with bylaws and fines. He gestured for me to sit, but I remained standing. "Who are you, and what is this about?" he asked, leaning back with an air of boredom. I slid the folder across the table. "Name? Daniel Carter. This is about my land. The land you built. This neighborhood on." Calloway's grin faltered. He opened the folder, scanning the documents, his fingers tightening as he realized what he was looking at. This isn't possible," he muttered. "It's very possible," I said. "See, ever sold this land? Those documents you're looking at, they prove I'm the rightful owner, which means every single house you sold is sitting on stolen property." He looked up, forcing a laugh. "Even if that were true." "It is true," I interrupted, "and I've already filed complaints with the county and the state. Fraud, illegal land seizure. And let's not forget the little problem of homeowners unknowingly sitting on property they don't own. You built an entire community on land you have no rights to. You think that's going to go over well in court?" For the first time, Calloway looked genuinely uneasy. His confidence cracked just a little. We acquired the land legally. The development firm forged the documents I finished for him. And you didn't bother checking? You just started building, assuming no one would challenge you." Calloway's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" I leaned forward. "I want my land back, and I want to watch your entire little empire collapse." For a moment, he just sat there, staring at me. Then without another word, he shoved the folder back at me and stood up. "You'll be hearing from our lawyers?" I chuckled. "Oh, I'm counting on it." Because what Calloway didn't know was that this was only the beginning. I had set the legal process in motion, and once they started turning, there was no stopping them. The HOA, the homeowners, the development firm. Every last one of them was about to realize just how deep in trouble they were. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. The first cracks in their foundation appeared within days. It started with a county investigation. My attorney had made sure my complaints reached the right people, and soon enough, an official review of the land records began. County officials weren't happy when they discovered that fraudulent paperwork had been used to transfer my land. Heads turned, emails started flying, and suddenly, the people who had been content to look the other way were scrambling to cover themselves. The HOA board, unaware to the storm brewing, kept operating as if nothing was wrong. That changed when the first batch of homeowners received letters from the county informing them that their properties were sitting on illegally obtained land. The panic set in immediately. Homeowners started calling the HOA office demanding answers. Some of them had spent their life savings on these homes, believing they were investing in a stable, well-maintained community. Now, They were being told their properties might be worthless. I didn't sit back and watch. I made sure to be right there answering questions when they came looking for the truth. I held a small meeting near the entrance of the neighborhood, right on what was supposed to be my land. About 30 homeowners showed up, all desperate for answers. "Is this real?" one woman asked, holding up her letter from the county. "Are they saying our homes don't legally belong to us?" "That's exactly what they're saying." I confirmed this. "This land was never legally sold. Your HOA and the developer built on stolen property. The county is investigating, and if this goes to court, the legal ownership of every house here will be in question." A man in the crowd swore. "I sunk everything into this place. What happens to us?" "That depends," I said. "If this goes the way I expect, the HOA and the developer will be forced to pay massive damages. But there's no easy fix. You're all living in homes that technically have no legal foundation. The sooner you start fighting the HOA, the better." They were angry now, not at me, but at the people who had tricked them. Richard Calloway and the HOA board showed up halfway through the meeting looking furious. "This is private property," he snapped. "You can't hold meetings here without HOA approval." I turned to face him, arms crossed. "You mean my property?" "Because legally speaking, that's exact what this is." The homeowners erupted, shouting questions at him, demanding answers. Calloway tried to calm them, claiming the situation was under control, but they weren't buying it. One homeowner, a retired Army veteran named Jim, stepped forward. "You told us everything was done by the book. We trusted you. Now you're telling us we might lose our homes." Calloway had no good answers. He muttered something about legal reviews, then stormed off when the questions got too heated. That was the beginning of the HOA's downfall. Within a week, half the community had turned against them. A group of homeowners started talking about dissolving the HOA entirely. Others were looking into lawsuits. And then the real bomb dropped. The county issued a stop work order on the remaining construction. That was when Gerald Langston, the developer, finally decided to show his face. He called me personally, trying to negotiate. I let him talk. He tried to downplay the situation, claiming there had been a misunderstanding with the paperwork. He even had the audacity to offer me a settlement, a laughably small amount of money to make the problem go away. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I recorded the entire conversation and sent it to my attorney. Langston had no idea that I wasn't interested in a quick payout. I wanted the whole operation to crumble, and I wasn't finished yet. Langston must have thought I was an idiot. The moment he realized I wasn't taking his hush money, he changed tactics. First, he tried intimidation, thinly veiled legal threats about how dragging this out would be costly for me. When that didn't work, he sent a couple of his people to poke around my property, probably to see if they could dig up dirt on me. That was a mistake. I had cameras set up around my land, motion sensors, the works. The second his henchmen stepped foot on my property, I had them on video. One even tried to tamper with my fence line, an easy trespassing charge. I sent the footage straight to my lawyer, who forwarded it to the county sheriff. That put an end to their little games real fast. Meanwhile, the homeowners were tearing the HOA apart from the inside. My meeting had planted the seed of doubt, and now was blossoming into full-blown rebellion. They started organizing, digging through the HOA's financials and questioning where their fees had gone. As it turned out, Calloway had been pocketing a nice chunk of the money for himself, disguised as administrative costs. The whole board was in chaos. Homeowners were filing complaints, refusing to pay fees, and pushing for a full audit. Calloway fought back the only way he knew how, by doubling down. He started issuing ridiculous fines, threatening foreclosure on anyone who didn't comply. But the problem for him was that I had already flipped too many people against him. He was losing control. Then the county finished its investigation. The ruling came down hard. My land had been stolen, the sale was fraudulent, and the entire development was built illegally. The county officially revoked the permits for the neighborhood. That meant every single home in that HOA was technically an illegal structure. The media got wind of the story next. Nothing sells like corruption and a homeowner crisis. Reporters swarmed the neighborhood, interviewing angry residents, exposing Callaway's financial wrongdoing, and digging into Langston's history of shady dealings. A lawsuit was inevitable. The final nail in the coffin came when my lawyer filed a formal lawsuit against both the Hoa and Westbridge properties. I wasn't just demanding my land back. I was suing for damages, fraud, and every illegal dime they had made off my property. The homeowners, desperate to save themselves, started filing their own lawsuits. Some went after the Hoa, others targeted Langston's company. Callaway resigned in disgrace, trying to slink away before the fire got too hot. Langston, on the other hand, tried to fight, but his company had too many skeletons. And with this case dragging his name through the mud, his investors started pulling out. By the time it was over, the Hoa was bankrupt. The development company was facing multiple lawsuits, and I was standing exactly where I wanted to be, right in the middle of my land, with every single one of their fraudulent contracts burning to ash. But I wasn't done yet. Callaway disappeared first. The moment the Hoa's finances were fully exposed, he resigned and left the homeowners to fend for themselves. But it was too late for him to escape cleanly. Several homeowners filed criminal complaints, and with the evidence of embezzlement piling up, he was looking at a very real chance of facing charges. Langston lasted longer. His lawyer fought tooth and nail to keep the case from going to trial, but they couldn't stop the rush. My lawsuit, combined with the homeowners' claims, became a massive class action case. The media attention wrecked his business reputation, and his investors abandoned him like a sinking ship. The lawsuits drained him dry. By the time the dust settled, Westbridge Properties declared bankruptcy, and Langston himself was under federal investigation for fraudulent land deals across multiple states. And my land, it was mine again. The court ruled in my favor, voiding the fraudulent sale and transferring full ownership back to me. The county gave the Hoa homeowners two options: buy the land their home sat on from me at full market price, or vacate. Some tried to fight it, but the law was on my side. They had bought homes that never should have been built. Most of them chose to leave. The few who stayed had to negotiate directly with me, and I made sure the terms were fair, but not cheap. I wasn't running a charity. The land was mine, and after everything I had been put through, I wasn't about to give handouts to people who had ignored the warning signs. With the Hoa bankrupt and dissolved, the neighborhood fell apart without Callaway's extortion racket keeping them in check. Some homeowners simply walked away, abandoning their houses. The one pristine luxury community became a ghost town within months. Eventually, the county stepped in and condemned the remaining structures, and that's when I really had my fun. The moment I got full legal clearance, I brought in demolition crews and bulldozed every single house. I erased the Hoa's legacy from my land, restoring it to the untouched beauty it had before they ever set foot on it. I planted trees where their overpriced homes once stood and let nature take back what was always mine. By the time I was done, there was no trace of the Hoa. No sign that Langston or Callaway had ever been here. Just rolling hills, thick woods, and stillness. Exactly the way it was meant to be.